It's time for the drive with Q on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. Now, here's Q.
Good evening, everyone. Well, we'll call it a couple minutes past the 5 o'clock hour on a Tuesday edition of The Drive with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the SR 102.9 FM The Game Studios, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. Mi hermano, never disheveled, never rattled. Angel Martinez behind the glass, producing the show, keeping us on the air. About 60 or so to play with on this Tuesday, the 17th of December 2024. We are powered again by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, and we'll invite you guys into the conversation, 727-858-6650. As already the comments will be coming in. It is a Tuesday edition. You know what? Let's just get right into it as I wax poetic, typically with my longer monologues. We'll welcome in, if we could, we'll welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game on Mondays, 8 o'clock. Him and Kevin M do a great job, and 15 weeks in the books, my friend. I always kind of say, what did we learn? It's like an impromptu, right? The doctor at Lloyd Vance joining us. It's like an impromptu spot, but we appreciate Angel putting it all together at last second. Look, 15 weeks in the books, and this is where I'm at right now. We always talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's get to the good right now. So we talk about some of these impressive wins over the weekend, right? Obviously, we saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw Buffalo. We saw Minnesota. Kansas City got a win again, albeit double digits. That's a surprise. Mahomes a little banged out. Who had the most impressive performance over the weekend?
Oh, no doubt, Q, it has to be the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, they stamped themselves as not only an NFC number one seed contender, but a Super Bowl contender. I threw out a lot of apologies to the Eagles last night because you know me, I kind of was skeptical of them and thought they beat a lot of bad teams like Carolina, Jacksonville, Cleveland, but they are a legitimate team. They totally dominated the Steelers 27-13, out physical them. And I went over a lot of the stats, and let me just read a couple of them off to you.
Sure.
Eagles had 401 total yards to Pittsburgh's 163. Eagles had 270 passing yards. The Steelers only had 107. And the biggest one I thought, Q, was time of possession. The Eagles had 39-52, and Pittsburgh only had 20-08. So it just showed you the dominance of this team. And I think they have a good opportunity to catch Detroit. And also, you do have to tip your cap to what Josh Allen and the Bills did. That was a big road win for them as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Eagles, and we kind of joked last week on Back Your Play on BYP that they would probably try to force feed the ball to Brown. That's exactly what they did. I mean, let's be honest. Jalen Hurts does not have to put up monster numbers, right? He just doesn't have to put up these monster numbers. And what we saw was a team that basically just decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to get you into the mix. We'll try to run the ball a little bit. They're not going to rely that much on Saquon Barkley. The defense played well. Pittsburgh came out a banged up team. Russ Wilson didn't look like the Russ Wilson we've saw over the last couple of weeks. Is that game more about the Philadelphia Eagles, or is that game more of an indictment on the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Ooh, I'd have to say, it's more the Philadelphia Eagles showing that they're a top team. But Q, there are some things in terms of the Steelers that you're like kind of scratching your head about. Mike Tomlin punted late in the game on fourth down when they probably should have went for it. And the Steelers just never really got going. A lot of people say, okay, yes, the Eagles offensive line did a great job, particularly TJ Watt had 0 sacks, 0 pressures in this game. Lane Johnson was all over him. And it was a dominant performance by the Eagles. But when you look at the AFC, I think there's kind of that gap between the Chiefs, the Bills, and then, the Steelers.
Yeah, so the other thing that I was thinking of when you look at the NFL as a whole, and we know that is certainly a week-to-week proposition, you saw Minnesota, right, and Sam Darnold playing really good football. Then, obviously, we saw what transpired in the Detroit game against the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with that game. Very entertaining game. I think right now, and we talked a little bit about this on the show, to me, Josh Allen solidified his as an NFL MVP. I mean, I throw out. I got some numbers on that, but I think Josh Allen at this moment is the best player in the NFL. And I love how some of these other talking heads, it's almost like they want to dispute this notion. Like who's he throwing it to? Right? Look at their weapons compared to what these other quarterbacks have. So I ask you this right now. Is Josh Allen a clear-cut NFL MVP? And are the Buffalo Bills the best team in the NFL?
To me, no doubt, Josh Allen is the MVP. He's had these signature wins. You talk about the long touchdown run against Kansas City Chiefs in that win, and then this one against the Lions. He was just spectacular. And you hit on a couple key things there. He was able to rush the football for them. 11 rushes, 68 yards, 2 TDs, moving the chains when he needed to with 6 first downs, and it was a scoring match. So their defense is not helping them. I know they're still kind of rounding in his shape with Matt Milano and some of these other guys that are a little banged up, but Josh Allen is truly the engine of this team, and Saquon only had about 69 yards or so rushing, so he kind of fell out of the mix. And then Lamar Jackson, yes, he has very good numbers, kind of similar to Josh Allen's in terms of total touchdowns, but he's the driver of the car, and when your team's winning like they are, they're 11-3. They've wrapped up their division. A lot of voters like having that top team having their MVP from there. And in terms of the best team in the AFC, ooh, Q, Parcells always said your record is what it is, right? But the Chiefs are 13-1, and that win against Cleveland was an ugly win, and that's what they've been doing over and over again. I,
Yeah.
I think the Bills probably would like to have a couple games back. Um, but it's going to be tough for them to catch the Chiefs and having that 2 game cushion. So I'll say, yeah, because of the record, the Chiefs are the top seed, but the Bills are definitely breathing down their neck.
Yeah. Well, I'll push back a little bit, right? Because the Bills beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, the last several games, they won by 3, they won by 4. Pardon me, they won by 3, they won by 2, they won by 2. Then they win by 14 against a bad Cleveland Browns team. We know Mahomes with his annual, kind of gimping around, ankle issues here and there. Their offense, I don't think their offense can match what the Buffalo Bills do and what Josh Allen brings to the table. And I think he is certainly, again, the X factor. That's just me. Now, with all that being said, we talked about the good, the Eagles, um, Buffalo, Kansas City winning again. Denver wins again. They're a surprise team with Bo Nix and Sean Payton. And then you look at last night in a game where if you grab the first half money line, if you grab the first half line, I mean, it was easy money with the Vikings -3. The Bears are a horrible team. They got, they haven't recovered since that loss against Washington. You have them, the Raiders, and the Giants with some really bad losing streaks. And they're going to make wholesale changes. But I watched that game last night and I tweeted this out. You look at Sam Darnold, and I know people are like, all of a sudden you're on. I always like Sam Darnold. Just thought he got a bad shake, if you will, when the Jets drafted him and he got banged up and he was injured and he had the mono and he was seeing the ghost and all that stuff. Sam Darnold has thrown a combined 27 touchdowns over the last 4 seasons prior to joining Minnesota. He's already thrown for 29 touchdowns this season. So I look at it like this. Maybe it's a team's inability that drafted you to cultivate your talent and help you succeed, not always the player's fault. Do you believe the truth lies somewhere in between?
It does with Sam Darnold. And he was a guy I was very high on coming out of USC. I thought he actually should have been the top pick. You had Baker Mayfield go in that slot, but he had all the skills, and it was just a bad situation, him going to New York Jets. And then, unfortunately, he's kind of bounced around the National Football League, goes to Carolina. We know they're one of the most dysfunctional teams out there. The Rams was a good stop for him. Not the Rams, the Niners was a good stop for him.
Right.
And that really taught him how to be a winner. Learned under Purdy, learned under Kyle Shanahan, and it is a rebirth. So a lot of people are saying, okay, is this a Case Keenum type situation in 2017 when he was with the Vikings? Rebirth and the other shoe will drop in the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see on that. But right now, his numbers look great, and he's in line for a big payday this offseason because he's on a 1-year contract.
Yeah, 727-858-6650. Again, see this what now. See, Angel did the faux pas. Angel commented from my channel because I'm looking at the comments right now, right? I mean, Trevor says he was detained. Vince says Tuesday show. Then he says, what the freak Tuesday? Then the man chimes in, tricky Q Tuesday. I mean, it is what it is. Just I'm not commenting on myself, a special surprise show. Get the hell out of here. 727-858-6650. Then you got the bad over the weekend and the ugly, and they kind of run concurrently. The Raiders are a bad football team. The Bears are a bad football team. I'm listening to Aikman last night talk about Caleb Williams. I mean, look, we were crushing Carolina with Bryce Young, and now you look at Caleb Williams. They gave him a running back. They gave him a wide receiver. Their offensive line is really piss poor. The kid's running around for his life. Perhaps it's the system. We don't know. We saw what the Raiders couldn't do offensively. We saw another dismal performance by the Giants. The Jets finally get a win. Titans are a bad football team. I mean, look, it is the race for the top spot right now come April, the number 1 overall pick. And right there, the Raiders are 1, the Giants are 2. I still maintain, the Giants are pissed off because content creators have gone out there and basically stated their case for why Joe Shane and Brian Daboll should be fired. And everyone's talking about planes flying over the stadium. Look, they won a playoff game a couple years ago. This is not the 70s. Is this one of the worst teams that I've ever endured as a fan? 100%. 100%. It is. They are historically bad. But again, I can go back to, I think it was 2018. They were 3-13. I mean, they dropped 6 of 7, then it was like 7 of 9. They were a bad football team. You've spoken to GMs over the years, and you've spoken to head coaches over the years. Do you believe that there are moments where some of these ownerships, some of these owners of NFL teams say to themselves, we just can't keep firing and hiring a head coach and a GM. So, if we keep doing that, we can't justify raising PSL ticket prices or PSL licensing. We can't justify that. So, and I asked you this because you look at what's going on with the Raiders, you look what's going on with the Jets, you look what's going on with the Giants and, other teams that we've talked about. If you're John Mara, either you consider selling the team or you really have to make a bold move. And if you're going to do it, you have to stand by your convictions because the fan base, we're not morons. They're not idiots. It's a bad product. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't sell me that it's a positive product or a talented product that's put out on the field and then try to justify keeping these guys because you're afraid of making a change again. So do you believe ultimately Mara is going to sit there and stay the course and say, we're going to give it 2 more years with these guys? And if so, do they deserve to still have their jobs?
Yeah, Q, I was talking about this on my show last night, and there's a few haves, the teams that we talked about, but there's so many have-nots, it seems, this season. There's teams with double-digit losses, and you're talking about the Giants. They're one of them, and it's true dysfunction there. And in the end, yes, you don't want to look like the Cleveland Browns and the Carolina Panthers, teams that have been changing their coaches over and over again. Guys getting 1 year and then they're done, and they have that great history. They try to compare themselves to the Steelers, and the Steelers stayed the course. Think about Cowher. He had some down years, and they brought him back. Even Tomlin, yeah, he's never had a losing season, but he's had seasons where, he barely finished even record. So if I'm the Giants, they got to look at that front office, and maybe they remove one of them. Whether Shane's kind of struggled. I looked at his drafts; they're not the best.
Yeah.
Daboll was the coach of the year, so everybody's always said he's a great teacher. He's an offensive minded guy. Right now, what they have out there is just total crap.
Yeah, but look, since he's left Buffalo, Josh Allen has flourished more. So this whole adage, you have to be this quarterback whisperer as a head coach. Well, that's kind of my point with Darnold. Sometimes, it's the wrong fit. You have the wrong personnel. You have the wrong GM, the wrong head coach in place. And maybe you do have the right players. And then sometimes you don't have the right players and you have the right head coach and GM in place. What I see is neither. They don't have the right GM. They don't have the right head coach. And they don't have a strong roster that's been built.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you that they should tear this thing down and just start anew. They've already gotten rid of Daniel Jones and um they said, okay, we're going to build around a young quarterback or a bridge guy, and just give someone a new opportunity. But the thing is, they made mistake after mistake. Judge McAdoo. It's egg on their
Shermer.
face.
Yep.
Shermer. It's just like, wow. Are,
Yeah.
are you? You're just flat out picking the wrong guys, and they want to compare themselves in their division to the Eagles and much success they've had, but they're kind of downtrodden, and it's going to be interesting to see if they took that long hard look, or they say, you know what, we're going to come back with the same group, and then I think it's probably going to have the same results if they bring the same leadership back.
Listen, as much as I despise the Philadelphia Eagles, what Howie's been able to do, the model of consistency with Jeffrey Lurie and constantly being in play, you're going to have a down year here and there in the NFL. It just happens. But everyone balked at the idea that they drafted Jalen Hurts. Why are you drafting Jalen Hurts if you just paid Carson Wentz? Well, it was the right move, right? I mean, think about it. In retrospect, in hindsight, it was the right move, and they believe they have their quarterback going forward. Now, we'll see how it plays out the rest of the season. Speaking of quarterbacks, and again, Tuesday edition of the Drive with Q. Yes, a freaking Tuesday edition of the Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here, Angel Martinez behind the glass, Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Atlanta Falcons paid Kirk Cousins a substantial amount of money. He has struggled mightily this year. I feel as though maybe within that locker room, they know once they go to Michael Penix, and I think I told you when they were like 3-10, they're 7-7. They're hanging around the NFC North. I feel once they go to Michael Penix, even at 7-7, if they decide to go to the kid, you can never go back to Kirk Cousins.
Yes, and Q, that was a win last night, ending a losing streak and all that, but it's 15-9 over a very bad Raiders team, and it was a struggle, man, the whole time for the Falcons. Bijan Robinson played pretty well defensively. Bates and some of the guys did, but this team is just a miss. And Cousins is not moving around the pocket. The line wasn't blocking the best, but you talk about seeing ghosts. I think sometimes he was in terms of the coverage, not letting the ball rip when he need to, and he's just looking flat old. So they paid him a lot of money. They gave him a 4-year deal. I think it was around 180, and they're going to have to figure out what to do, because then they draft Penix, which kind of expounds the problem, and then you're like, okay, Penix Jr. sitting there, played the national championship game, the All American guy, and why not give him opportunity? Cousins, when he's throwing all those interceptions as he leads the NFL in interceptions, it's just kind of laughable. I think in the coming weeks you're going to see them try to give it a go, but as they move towards the off season and in training camp, it'll probably be Penix that they go with in the future.
How much trouble are the Lions in? Look, they lost that game against Buffalo. I'll ask you off the bat. There's a difference between being aggressive and then kind of being dumb. And I know Dan Campbell had another fiery, post game press conference. He put it all on me. I think it's inexplicable. I love the aggressiveness, but you're not kicking it on as I kick down 10 with 13 minutes to go. My buddy, who is a diehard Lions fan, basically was texting me back and forth saying, well, look at their secondaries banged up. They just lost the edges. They lost these D linemen. They can't stop Buffalo, try to get another possession. I don't agree with it. It cost them. They weren't going to win the game because of the level of play that Josh Allen and the Bills are on right now. But the injuries are mounting up. Like, if that's my concern right now. If you're a Lions fan, you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness, like another player, another player, another player. Now you lose the running back, you're losing corners, you're losing DEs, you're losing defensive linemen, you're getting guys knocked, knocked out of the game. I mean, those injuries that they're mounting up right now, and now the pressure's starting to mount on Detroit because a lot of people believe this was going to be their year. You get the number one seed, you rip through the NFC, and you're off and running. But do you think the injuries have finally caught up with the Lions, and do you believe now it's going to derail their Super Bowl aspirations?
Yeah, there's a couple things to scare you going into the playoffs for this team, particularly Dan Campbell. You're like, what are you doing with his decision making? Particularly that onside kick, there was no need for it. They're only down 10 points with about 10 minutes left. They easily could have got a stop and then had two scores. But um, the other thing, yes, the injuries are huge, Q, and you lose David Montgomery to an MCL. They lose Carlton Davis, one of their corners that they brought into a fractured jaw, and then the big one was the Lions lose their defensive line again. Amin McNeil to an ACL. So on top of Hutchinson earlier.
Mhm.
Anzalone's out. There's just a myriad of injuries with this team. So many guys on IR, and yes, they're going to say, "Oh, next man up," and we're still in the fight. But when you look at the games that they have left, you start to wonder, okay, you know, they're at Chicago, which probably will be a win. At San Francisco, maybe a tough game, but that key game at the end of the season where they host Minnesota may
Minnesota. Yep.
where it may all come down to, and it may look at the divisional record. Now the Eagles are actually don't have the tiebreaker between these two teams, the Lions and the Vikings, and
Right, 'cause
that's
of
going to be
the conference
interesting.
losses. Yep.
But if Detroit stumbles, particularly maybe on the road against the Niners, it may open the door for the Eagles, who are at Washington, Dallas, and the
And the Giants.
Giants. So
Yeah.
one tough game next week coming up, and then two teams that are kind of finishing out the string. So I still have a feeling that the Eagles may have the good opportunity for the number one seed, but the Lions they're going to have next man up, and Gibbs is really going to get a chance to shine here. But defensively, Aaron Glenn's group, they've been getting beat over the top a lot in pass coverage, and then they're just losing so many guys because they're not getting pressure. They have Jamal Adams out there rushing the passer, which is like they're really struggling for bodies.
Falcons head coach Raheem Morris declined to name a starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix, as they get set to take on the Giants. I already start to look at some of these lines for the weekend. They're just utterly ridiculous. I mean, it shows you how bad the quality of play is with some of these teams right now, like a little sneak peek if you kind of look ahead. Look, we don't know about Patrick Mahomes. That's why the line right now is Kansas is sitting 2.5, but the Ravens are 6-point favorite. Atlanta's a 10-point favorite over the Giants. The Lions are 7-point favorite over the Bears. Carolina on the road, 4.5, 5 against, Arizona 4-5 against Carolina. Buffalo laying 14. I mean, you got some ridiculous lines. As we typically do, and I know you do on your show, I go good, bad, the ugly. You do the game balls and then the lackey. And I never see this when you tweeted it because we try to make it, the spontaneity,
Sure.
if you will. But if we were to say game ball, man,
This is a
how do you
tough
not
one. A
give it to
lot
Josh?
of good choices.
How do you not give it to Josh Allen or
Game,
Lamar
game,
Jackson?
Yeah, you hit right on the nail. Josh Allen was incredible in this game. 23 of 34, 362, two TDs, no interceptions. I talked about his rushing numbers earlier. In Buffalo, they couldn't be stopped. They had 559 total yards in
Crazy.
this game. So they were scoring quickly, early, and often. Now, you also have to give your hat tip, though, to Jalen Hurts, uh, Derek Stingley Jr., who had two picks in the Texans win as well. So a lot of these guys are stepping forward, and it's that playoff push that you like to see from these guys.
I mean, Lackey, every week I feel as though you can have the same quarterback, you can have the same team. I would be shocked if you gave it to Dan Campbell because we're always wooing and on when he makes the right call. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I mean, the Dolphins didn't play well. The Colts didn't play well. How about the Chargers? Who'd you give? Who was Lackey of the week?
Yeah, there were a lot of choices. Levis was terrible. He had three picks and a fumble, including a pick six. But I went with Jameis Winston, the Browns quarterback. He was just off. I know you're like, oh, Lloyd, you give him Lackey all the time, but he played so bad. They took him out. They put DTR in this one. 16 to 25, 146, three interceptions. And for all the fantasy football players out there, had a negative .36 in terms of his total. So he was terrible, and he deserved to be benched. He gets a Lackey.
Trevor chimes in regarding the last playoff spot in the NFC. Now, if you look at the moment, Eagles, Detroit, Minnesota, obviously those are your front runners. If the Rams win the division, there's 4. Tampa wins division, there's 5. And then it's kind of like, Green Bay's right there. They're going to grab the 6. And then you have, I told you, I think Washington has won 2 straight. That was a big win for them, even though it's not the most impressive win, but they were able to now win 2 straight after dropping 3 straight. They've got the Eagles, Falcons, and the Cowboys. I think if Washington can go 2-1 and get to 11 wins, that'll lock in that 7th spot, and I'll look like a friggin' genius because I said they were going to make the playoffs. They're not going to win a division, but they're going to make the playoffs.
I said the same thing. I had that feeling about this squad, and Daniels has played very well. So they had that Eagles game, Atlanta at Dallas, and I think they're going to have the opportunity. And it's very heavy in the NFC in terms of. Don't forget the Minnesota Vikings they're the fifth seed at 12. They're 12-2. And then you have Green Bay, who's a double digit win team in there as well. And then I think Washington can get it done because the other teams behind them, I just don't see them kind of catching fire. Other than we have to look at that NFC South division with Tampa Bay. Are they going to be able to hold off Atlanta? Who, Tampa's lost to them twice, but I think Tampa Bay's playing some good ball on that 4-game winning streak. They're at Dallas, Carolina, New Orleans, some very winnable games there.
Kevin C on Facebook chiming in. Q, I know you mentioned this a lot of years ago, and I thought you said it the other day with Eli Manning having a big game against the Eagles to close out the regular season. It was smoke and mirrors. You think that's the same issue with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers? Curious to hear your and Lloyd's take. Enjoying the show as always. So I mentioned yesterday that, the Giants looked on film and you had the one game. It was pretty much right around Andy Reid's last couple games in his tenure with the Eagles. I think Eli threw 5 touchdown passes, put up 40-something odd points. They were like, hey, he can still throw it on film. You tried to squeeze a couple more years out of him. And let's be honest, it just wasn't the right decision at the time. I mentioned yesterday to Jet fans, don't be fooled by what you saw from Aaron Rodgers. He's going to have moments where he's turning back the clock, and Adams went off in the second half, practically 200 yards and a couple big receptions. I feel the Jet fan is going to waver now, and in their mind, they think this is what could be, and they're going to want Aaron Rodgers back. And I'm here to tell them, I got news for you. It's not going to make a difference. Like, what you saw the other day was a fleeting moment. He's still going to get banged up. He's still going to bitch and complain. He's still going to want his players. He's still going to throw people under the bus. He's still going to complain that he doesn't have the right head coach or the right offense. And he's still going to go on McAfee and say goofy things. And he's not that same guy anymore. He's just not. Now, again, in hindsight, the Jets probably shouldn't have pulled the plug on Robert Saleh 5 games in. But that's their mess. They got to clean it up. So I asked you this. Is this a false sense of security right now, seeing Rodgers kind of turn back the clock? And is there justification, even if you look at his stats and his numbers this year, where you say, yeah, bring him back. Let's run it back one more time?
Yeah, Q, I think it was an aberration. And I've been watching this team so much this season. And some people are going to point to offensive line that's older, and they probably brought in the wrong free agents there. They do have Fasano that they drafted, and we'll see how he does in the future. But Rodgers had a nice moment. It was one of those like, okay, this was your moment in the season, and
Yep.
him and Adams hooked up like the olden days, and they were just clicking, and it was a back and forth game. But you think about it, that's a very bad Jags team they kind of struggle with, and my thing is he's just not moving around the pocket like he needs to be, and he's 41 years old, so he's never really going to get his legs back after that Achilles injury, and then in the off season he's not interested in putting in the work. He's just not that teammate that's going to come to OTAs and come to off-season activities and be totally prepared. So they were asking me on my show last night, do I think he's going to go someplace else? He'd probably be smart to just kind of walk away because he seems to be interested in some other things. And with the McAfee show, as you were saying, maybe he gets into broadcasting. But it'll be interesting to see if he says, no, I want one more chance. He comes back as a bridge quarterback. I threw out, like, say Tennessee was like, come here and play. How crazy would that look if Aaron Rodgers went someplace like that?
We've seen Hall of Fame players. I mean, hell, Brett Favre bounced around. He went to the Jets and then he went to Minnesota, and he was a don't throw it across your body interception away from taking that team to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, so it happens. Rob chimes in on Facebook. Q, always enjoying the football talk with Big Lloyd. Here's a question for you. You mentioned the other day that Lamar Jackson is definitely one of the best players of football, but today you're saying Josh Allen is much more better and the MVP. Very questionable. I don't think it's questionable. Lamar Jackson is a freak of nature, but I just think Josh Allen at this moment is not human. I mean, again, back backs against the wall, back in a corner, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Who is, if you can only pick one, who's the MVP?
Yeah, I'm going with Josh Allen. And somebody sent me this the other day in terms of total touchdowns. Lamar Jackson 37, Josh Allen 37. Allen actually has more interceptions, 5, than Lamar Jackson's 3. But when you watch the games and the importance to their team,
Correct.
that's
Correct.
where I you take Josh Allen off of the Bills, they're done. You know what I mean? I remember when Mitchell Trubisky had to come in for them, and they they just were, the team just had nothing. Yes, Cook has had a good season in terms of running the football, but Allen is one of their number one rushers. He moves the chains when needs be. He makes a lot of special plays. Lamar, he does a lot of similar things for the Ravens, but they're built around Derrick Henry in that offensive line. The defense isn't what it needs to be this year. But I just think Josh Allen is the overall catalyst and force multiplier for the Bills that you say, okay, give it to him. And then Lamar's won it twice. So, you know, I think the voters will want to go for somebody new, and this is Allen's season.
So this has been annoying me since Saturday. Um, Travis Hunter wins the Heisman, and rightfully so. He's a fantastic player. I mean, just the stamina and conditioning to play both sides, both ends of the field. Both sides of the football. It's amazing. Um, and I wouldn't get up in arms if the Giants are sitting at number one and they select him. I still maintain, if you really want to build assets, you trade you trade down, or you trade the pick, and you just acquire assets. With that being said, let's just go on the theme that the Giants are 1, the Raiders are 2, and the Pats are 3. Give me the pros and cons of drafting Shador Sanders. If you're the Giants, what's the pro?
The pro would be you're bringing a young quarterback that's a building block, and you can start looking towards the future. The thing is, Q, when I watch Shador play, he kind of has to wait till his receivers are open. He's not that anticipation type thrower, and you just wonder how he's going to fit in with the Giants culture, and the media blitz that's going to come after him, and then there's that whole, he's Dion's son. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be that circus around that. So I was talking to my son about
Is
this.
that the con?
Yeah, I don't see him fitting with the Giants. I don't see the Giants taking Shador.
What
Um,
about Cam Ward? Apparently, they saw enough of this kid
mhm,
where they've, little flirtation. They've fallen in love with Cam Ward, and
yeah.
the more people I speak to that are close to the team, and a couple former players have basically told me, pretty much, yeah. I mean, I can live with either one. A couple of them are like, we really like Cam Ward. I mean,
Yeah, and
I
he's
guess
the unknown, and that
there you
seems to be
go.
the new quarterback. Jaden Daniels. Let's not forget, he at Arizona State, he kind of had some missteps, and then he hit lightning in a bottle with LSU. And Cam Ward's kind of been the same thing. He was at Washington State, and he played a little inconsistently, but he's had a great season for Miami. And I could see actually the Giants maybe looking towards him. He's a little bigger than Shador, and he's a little better thrower of the football. So it's going to be interesting at the top. Travis Hunter, though, is such an exceptional talent. The only thing is, if I took him as a GM, I'd tell him, I said, look, you're
You're
just
playing
going to play
quarterback.
DB. Just play DB.
Yeah.
We saw Dion try to do it. Champ Bailey tried to do it where they played both sides. And you just get too beat up physically as a receiver. I still remember Dion going across the middle against the Eagles, and
Getting cracked.
Andy Harmon just wrecked him. And that
Yeah.
just kind of was like, okay, you're putting your number one corner out there to take hits on offense.
The other thing, the reality is, you're lining up for 120 something snaps a game, like you're doing with Colorado. That's not sustainable in the NFL, and your body's going to break down, right?
I I definitely agree, and it's such a physical game. And as you and I are talking about with all the injuries with the Lions, it's going to be crazy to see if these guys truly want to go to an 18 game season, because
Oh,
that you're seeing more and more guys on IR. You may say, okay, it's business decision on some of these have not teams. Guys are like, I'm shutting it down for a year, but some of the better teams, they're losing a lot of good players, and it's going to be interesting to see who lasts into the playoffs.
Listen, it's a war of attrition, right? And when you get banged, every team's dealing with it. I mean, it's funny too. I was just looking at the wire. So the Browns are actually benching crab legs. They're going to go to Dorian Thomas Robinson. Titans benched their big bicep quarterback Levis, who stinks, by the way. You know, if you're San Francisco and you know you had Sam Darnold, do you think Sam Darnold as a backup right now would be better than Brock Purdy? Like if Sam Darnold had an opportunity with the 49ers right now, say Brock Purdy was banged up, would Sam Darnold, or just the injuries of just too much for a team like the Niners? Because remember, the Niners basically said, we like him. He's a pro's pro. We want to figure out a way to sign him, keep
Yeah,
him.
and I think there's just better pieces around Sam Darnold right now with the Vikings. As you said, the Niners have had so many injuries and the team's in kind of disarray. No Ayuk, you have Debo Samuel. It looks like he's done with that team, and no Christian McCaffrey. So uh, that's an interesting question though. And the thing is about Purdy, that's the referendum because he's coming up on his last season. This off season, he's going to get a new contract, and you wonder, is he going to get paid that $50 million threshold? Is he worth it? And the teams really lived off of him being on that value deal, and they were able to pay so many other guys, but they have a lot of business decisions to make in terms of who they're going to pay, not pay for the Niners this offseason.
Vikings and I'm sorry, Falcons and Commanders, week 17. That game has been flexed to Sunday Night Football. So you got Jaden Daniels, and who knows if it's going to be Penix, that is flexed to Monday Night Football. The game, which will be broadcast on NBC, replaces the previously scheduled contest between the Dolphins and the Browns. Hard pass. You got the Chargers and New England, and basically that'll be a 1 o'clock kickoff. Denver, Cincinnati, Arizona, and the Rams. Ooh, not a lot to go by with that. Two more before I let you get out of here, and always appreciate a couple moments. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 FM The Game, and of course, part of Sports Radio 1029 FM The Game, Coastal Sports Network. Man chimes in. NFL is a different animal. Players can't stay healthy on one side of the ball. Vince chimes in. Anyone who drafts Hunter better play him on both sides, or they'll get fired. Their best wide receiver will be sitting on offense, or their best cornerback will be sitting on defense. Gotta let talent be talent. But at what price? Right? I mean, this is not like years ago when we're going to have corners go back and return punts, i.e., Jason Sehorn, right? And he gets
Yeah.
banged up and he gets hurt and he tears up his knee against the Jets in preseason. He's never the same player. Like, he is such a freak athlete, this kid is. Maybe you have a couple plays in there for him, but I just can't imagine 3 and out. Then all of a sudden you flip and you're in the offensive huddle.
Yeah, and I talked to so many coaches over the years in terms of special teams and multi roles for some of these guys are too valuable, to play somewhere else. And as you said, when they get injured, it's just like, oh man, now I've lost a big piece of my whole defensive game plan. Yes, Champ Bailey was good enough to play on both sides, but in the end, Denver was like, you know what, we need him more to be that cover guy, shut down the other team. That's more important than the couple big plays that'll give us on offense. So I think maybe they come up with some packages for Hunter when he's young. Maybe it's his first 3 years. They use him in a variety of ways. But as he gets older, he's going to have to mature into a player that plays only one side of the ball.
All right, Joe D in Philly always chiming in. Joe D used to chime in when we were in Delaware, and of course down here doing the midday show. Q and Lloyd, do you really think Bill Belichick is going to coach one full season at North Carolina? Did you
Y-
see his out? If he
Yeah,
leaves early, I think he only pays a $1 million fine.
Yeah, and his son, it seems Steve Belichick is all set up to kind of come in there and be defensive coordinator, maybe take over. I do see him staying there at least for this 1 year and trying to figure things out. I think he's going to likes control of the situation because let's face it, in the NFL, these owners were tired of his act, and you're not seeing many guys that wear both hats, where they're coach and the GM. So it's a good opportunity for him. Let's face it, the ACC is kind of down, and they may be able to jump in the mix and it's going to be fun to watch. But the two games are totally different, as we talked about last week. Q college game is so much different, especially as well with NIL and these portal transfers. Maybe he'll get some of these guys want to come and play with him like they've done for Dion because he knows all the pro techniques.
So, do you believe that Belichick, wherever he goes, he can be successful? I mean, he signs his 5-year, $50 million deal, right? So now all of a sudden they have this projected surge in NIL spending to about $20 million. So obviously, you can try to grab some really big time um, talent. And think about this. If these kids are making a couple million, well, he's used to the pro game with these athletes making $1 million. Or do you believe that his personality will not translate to 17, 18, 19-year-olds?
It's going to be real interesting because some guys that I talked to when his last couple seasons with the Patriots, players were telling me he was out of touch, and these were young pro teams, and they just weren't buying into his Patriot way, and he's going to have to change the way he does things because, as you're alluding to, Q, these college kids are different because they want immediate gratification, and he's not going to coach them as hard as he coached Tom Brady because some of these kids will just say the heck with it, I'll go someplace else. So he's going to have to adapt and change. And it almost reminds me of like, remember when Tom Coughlin, they had that talk with him. They're like, look, man, you can't do this old school stuff. We got to
Because he knew he
change.
was going to get fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he changed. And you're right. That's a great point. They won 2 Super Bowls. He just changed when the Giants had that players committee led by Strahan and the likes. I look at the Belichick situation, and I know you guys laughed at me when I said, wouldn't it be something if he took the Jets head coaching job? There was a flirtation. Apparently, reports are he reached out to the Jets. We don't know if that was for leverage or to tease him. Who knows? But I will say this: if the Jets, you got to do your due diligence. And listen, a lot of people are saying there's no question that Belichick asked about the Jets opening because maybe he saw this path. Let me get Aaron Rodgers for a season and 2. I'm a defensive guy. We got defensive players. Here we go. That didn't fall into place. It would have been just very interesting. I still think if you're the Jets, you got to do your due diligence. But the other thing also is that you know, you look at the situation in UNC and Mike Lombardi, former GM with the Raiders, and all these guys are trying to petition for these GM jobs. I mean, listen to Louis Riddick. That guy wants a Giants GM position. That guy wants a GM position, period. Every time you listen to them during the broadcast, they're just sending these little messages. Hey, man, I'm available for the job if need be. Let me revise the resume. But Lombardi, turns around and he's talking about Moore's going to be out in Tampa. The Glazer family loves Belichick. It's almost like because he's very close to Belichick. So let me try to help him with the leverage. That turns out to be a BS bogus report, right? I mean, go figure, because the guy is also the one that said years ago, Doug Peterson was a horrible hire for the Eagles. And oh, by the way, they only won a Super Bowl, their lone Super Bowl in franchise history with who is at the helm, Doug Peterson. And then Lombardi follows Belichick's tail to Carolina. I mean, you can't make this up with these goofballs.
Yeah, he's going to bring the whole band back together. Ernie Adams and the Josh McDaniels and Judge will
Oh,
probably be looking for a job. All these cronies that have failed as head coaches, Matt Patricia will bring his pencil down there, and you know maybe it'll come together for him, kind of like what Colorado did, turn things around. But I just don't see that happening, and I was actually surprised that he didn't remain kind of patient and wait until around the Senior Bowl. That's when teams start filling their openings. And but I just feel like coaches had already and owners had already talked, and they say, we're going in a new direction. We're going
yeah,
younger. We don't want somebody that's going to have this uh, leadership complex, where it's my way or the highway, and they
sure.
want somebody that can mold. They all seem to want to go towards that McVay model. Somebody, a young, up and coming offensive minded coach, and then for GM. Brad Holmes, who's from the Rams model, and now he's doing great things with the Lions. He's a young guy that rose up the ranks in personnel, and then he became a GM. So that's what they seem to be leaning more towards with these owners.
All right. Dog's getting restless over there. He, of course, is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, Mondays, 8 to 9 on SR 1029 FM. The Game. He joins me during the drive, as well as BYP. We got to drop a new one to start to take a look at week 16 already. Always appreciate a couple moments, my friend. I know we will do it multiple times later on this week, but always appreciate you chiming in for a couple moments. Thank you.
All right. Look forward to talking to you later.
All right, there you have it. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. We are getting requests, by the way, Angel. I don't know if you can hear me, but they wanted to go with the not the quad box, but the trifecta box. They wanted to try to stick the incredible shrinking Hermano, pluck him up there with myself and Lloyd. We get the play-by-play from, there he is, the play-by-play.
When you have the two big personalities, there's no room for the scrub guy. So, I just stay way in the way back.
I mean, seriously, really?
Yeah,
this is what we're doing right now? This is what we're doing. We got a nice Tuesday edition. We got some good engagement, some good comments, some nice eyeballs on X that we typically do, because we're just not sprouting out nonsense. We're just not regurgitating. We're just not taking what all the other talking heads said and just sprouting out to the listening audience. And then you want to come in with this piss poor attitude.
No, it's not piss poor. I just.
Let me tell you something. Yes, I feel it already. The energy. All you had to do was trifecta box. There's no ego here. I can't help it if my screen is bigger than yours.
There's no ego. No, I had to get a couple of things pushed out. I did see the comment, but I had to get a couple of things pushed out as I'm walking in the door. It's been a crazy day today.
It has.
So, as I've been walking in, unfortunately, what is it? Stand up with it. Listen, I try, but
stand up, triple with it.
But it was a lot. So I had to get things pushed out before I forget and before the night gets away from me. So it's been a very long day, hopefully with some good stuff here in the near future.
Break the news early, Q. I mean, there's nothing really to break. I mean, what it is basically, I'll talk more about this tomorrow, but what Angel and I were talking about for this show is that we're probably going to have the drive go 5 days. And we're just figuring out logistically, if that was the case, we would have kicked Trevor out of here. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out logistically if we'll be able to do the show video wise. And we're also looking to go back to the original 4 to 6. So in essence, you would get me liberal arts, math, potentially 10 hours a week, plus on demand, plus BYP on the YouTube channel. So there's other news that we'll get into tomorrow. Impatient, man. I'll tell you, it's so impatient.
Yeah, it's the way it works.
It's unbelievable. It just, again, impatient. 18, 19, what do? You go to the gentleman's club for the first time. First girl that walks around, you have to, again, there we go. See that? Here we go again. What does that mean? Here we go again. What do they think? I'm stalling? Is that what they think?
I think X-Men probably knew where you were going.
Oh,
because then the jokes will start coming in afterwards, and he's got a million of them, especially as the show's in. Here we go.
We'll find out well, that's baseball season right around the corner. When you think about it. By the way, did you see who the Yankees acquired? Bellinger.
Cody Bellinger, really?
Yeah. Cubs trade Bellinger cash to the Yankees for Poteet.
Not a bad move.
No, not at all. They're stocking up on talent. And why not? Because what happened? They missed out on bringing back Soto. I always liked Bellinger.
It's only been a short amount of time that the teams have been away, but how did Juan Soto end up gaining weight that quick?
So it's funny. I text my buddies the same thing. I said the jersey looked a little tight.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe he that's ridiculous. I'm not even gonna I don't like those comments, to be quite honest with you. And to be honest, those are shots. Those are subtle shots about us having issues with electricity. Or maybe what they're saying is they're devoting a full 2 hours to the drive with Q, and they have to keep their phone charged and tune us in while they're in the cubicle at work. Now, methinks some of these group balls work remotely. That's what I think. If we were doing a straw poll. Or were they just taking a shot at the electricity issues?
No, I think we're past that point.
Do you think the 49ers suspension was warranted or too harsh? You're talking about the player that didn't want to go back in? I'm assuming that's what Vince is talking about.
Possibly, because I can't think about anything else. But
No,
personally, I think he should be kicked off the team.
He quit. He flat out quit.
So why not release him?
No, he flat out quit. The kid did not want to go back in because who was it? The other defensive player was healthy, and he got pissed off. I mean, you know why they did it, by the way, why they suspended him, because it's all about financial ramifications. The 49ers are not going anywhere. They're 6-8. They've had so many injuries this year, okay? So again, if you're DeAndre Campbell, you got an opportunity to go in the game. You go in the friggin' game. You don't hem and haw. You don't turn around and lose the respect of your teammates who are trying to battle. It's a privilege to play. It's a right to play. These guys have fought tooth and nail to earn it. And if you're not going to give 110%, 100%, guess what? You got players that got shot that came back.
Yeah.
Torn ACLs, torn MCLs, and they're playing. And this guy he wanted to take his ball and run home. And that's why the 49ers are like, we're not going to release you so you can latch on to another team. We're suspending you because of the financial ramifications. Now, he can recoup probably about $3.3 million of the signing bonus. But if the 49ers somehow reach the playoffs, they would have to decide what to do with him. Now, it's more likely they're going to miss the playoffs. So again, he'll become unrestricted free agent in March. But the problem is, talk about future employment. Are you going to take a flyer on this player? That's all I would say. Are you going to take a flyer on him knowing that he quit? Not a shot, need a charger to watch. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we can have like a Sports Radio 102.9 FM, the game store. Union
Possibly.
worker. He has that right now. Not in the contract. You can ask for your release. I don't need to grant you your release. I don't. And the reason is I don't want to ultimately he signed a 1-year, $5 million deal, I believe, and I'll double check. Okay.
Right.
But again, if there's incentives in there and he's reached them, that's a different story. If he didn't, that's another animal. You don't have to sit there. I'm suspending you without pay. That's conduct detrimental to the team. That's why, again, if he fights it and it goes to the union and they sit there and say, well, wait a second, 49ers don't have a leg to stand on. Well, yeah, he was healthy and he just refused to participate in the game. That's conduct detrimental to the team. That's all it is, period. So now I can recoup that signing bonus because you're not living up to your contract. That's just exactly where they're at. And we've seen this in the NFL. Do you remember years ago what the Eagles did with Terrell Owens? They just sent him home.
Yep.
Because they didn't want to pay him. They didn't want to deal with that headache. You cannot, under any circumstances, again, I'm not cutting you because you're saying, I say to you, Angel, you're my coach. Angel, screw you. I'm not going in. Cut me, release me. Why? Because I know we're not going anywhere, but maybe there's a linebacker or defensive end needy team that needs another player on defense. They need some depth. You're not going to honor that because I'm not going in. Why should you release me and then I go play for a playoff contender and get scooped up the waiver wire?
Yep.
You didn't want to play for me because the team's struggling, the team stinks, because an injured player is now 100% healthy and that's going to take away your snaps and your reps? Get the hell out of here. No way. It's conduct detrimental to the team, period. There's no gray area with this. You're healthy to go out there. The coach is basically saying, go out there. Go out there. Go with your defensive mates. Here we go. 3rd and 6. You got to be out on the field. He chose not to. And I agree with that, Les.
Yeah, so do I.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Talk about
so
a
do I.
detriment.
Yep. Yeah. I guess I can't.
I don't know. We don't need to name him. He's just a clown. He gets too much airtime. No, not bad, man. I meant to comment of who he was talking.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. No, he is a detriment to that team for sure. He should have a flag next to him. As soon as you see his face, flag, get him off, send him into the locker room. I can't stand it, but whatever. That's what they wanted. That's what they got. C'est la vie. It's going to be, all I know is you got a 10-game win streak going on. It's going to be hard to win against Washington. It's not going to be a walk in the park for sure. I hope it's not a dog walk as we saw with San Fran last year. I don't see it, but at the same time, too, the Commanders are not trying to go down for the remainder of the season after that hot start he had.
That's a big game.
Yeah.
They got Washington, Dallas, and the Giants, and you can ill afford to trip up, especially with Minnesota and Detroit. Those are three teams. Hey, stop beating that. Those are three teams that are trying to get locked in for that number 1 seed. I don't understand why this dog's got to chew everything.
It's the way.
You know what she tried? My signed ball.
Oh,
One
no.
of many. She tried to nibble on this.
Uh-oh.
Are you kidding me?
Did you put her in a 5-minute timeout?
We don't do that.
Okay.
No.
I just figure, you give her a bone, just tell her 5 minutes, there you go, and then we'll come back to it.
Let's close it out with our Tuesday joke of the day. Why not?
Here we go.
Yeah, go ahead, fire it off. Let's see what the.
I'm waiting for the punchline. Forget it. Forget it.
All right. Well, we're gonna put a special Tuesday edition of the Drive with Q in the books. We will be back in the saddle tomorrow, and we will have some news. And I'm sorry, you will just have to tune in right around the 4:45-ish. Maybe we come a little early. That's another thing. I've noticed you would think, like when we get the guys that jump on and they're like, oh man, the Drive with Q, here we go, outstanding. Let's freaking go, LF. And then why are you starting at 4:40? Why are you starting early and not letting us know? Hey, push notification. That's on you.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
That means you have to do it, correct?
The push notification. Yeah, but again, the problem was I had walked in the door to get you guys in live.
I'll tell you what, you were in the military. Do we want to hear excuses? You know what? Tell me what you think. I think at the end of the day, he's a weasel, but we also see eye to eye. We were commissioned together. We went to Nam together. We did our tour together. I might have gone up the ranks with more speed than you. If that is a source of contention, I really don't give an F. That's on you, Pushman. Do we have anything else coming up live tonight?
No, Tuesday, there's nothing live usually on Tuesday nights, obviously other than a surprise for this one here, but no, Tuesday nights are usually pretty quiet, but no, Wednesdays we have obviously the full slate and then Talking Hoops. The newest member of Talking Hoops will be tomorrow. Doc Riley joins the show, replacing Ron Briscoe. So that's going to be a great time tomorrow night. So if you guys are on Q's channel tonight, tune in tomorrow night at 8:00. You guys are going to like that show over there. So it's a lot of fun.
And our guy, Jonathan Marshall, and his brother with the Marshall Time, the Hoops podcast, they're going to be sprouting out some new shows as well. So you can download the app, SR1029 FM The Game, go to the website. We got a really nice chunk of traffic yesterday. So keep it rolling. You guys are fantastic. We will do it again tomorrow. This is the longest clip. It's really not.
Have to deal with them.
Wait till tomorrow. It's really not a big deal. I will be checking the wires for Q breaking news all night. You should. You should. You absolutely should. You know, it's interesting too, because Eagle fan, they've been somewhat a little quiet. Oh, I did get a message. Hold on. An Eagles fan, this was sent to me. Who writes the news crawl? It seemed very pro-Philly and anti-New York Giants.
I don't write it.
The crawl on the bottom.
Yeah, that's right. I just get it from the Newswire.
Do you?
See, I get it from the Newswire. If I had the time to write all that crazy stuff, sure, but no, I get it from the Newswire because it's funny because again, it comes down to pleasing folks. It's either I put something down and then they don't like it, or I put something new and they don't like it.
Uberly sensitive today. Let's check out the Wire for a moment. He will get surgery to repair a torn MCL.
See, handshakes.
Handshakes, Trevor. See you next time. Campbell, after he refused to enter the game versus the Rams, San Francisco 49ers linebacker Devontae Campbell was suspended for 3 games. Is The Wire based? Whoa. That's horrible. Is The Wire based in Philly? You talking about The Wire TV show? Oh, no. He's talking about The Wire, the bottom scroll. We call it The Bottom Scroll. The Wire was in Baltimore.
Correct.
The Bottom Scroll, we believe it's based in Southwest Florida somewhere. We cannot disclose the location, Trevor. We can't. We believe it's in the Tampa, Newport, Richie area. That's all we're saying. We also believe, according to our sources who have seen much above us, we also believe that wire is definitely manipulated to appease the Philadelphia audience.
Never. Never the case.
All right, brother. Hey, we appreciate you guys chiming in. Hey, tomorrow on a Wednesday, back in the saddle with a Wednesday edition of The Drive. Keep the comments coming, 727-858-6650 for the incredible Shrinking Hermano. Angel Martinez, I'm Rich Canales. Appreciate Lloyd Vance jumping on board. Catch him every Monday night, 8 to 9. Also, we'll upload a new edition of BYP on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. Give us a follow on social media platforms. Follow Angel, myself, SR 1029 FM, The Game, and of course, Coastal Sports Network, powered by our good friends over at Played Again Sports and Fresh Roasted Coffee. Have a good Sports Tuesday, and we will talk to you as always tomorrow. And as we like to say, be well, be safe. Hasta luego, buen día.